Who's ready to talk security? Woo! Everyone's favorite topic.
Yeah.
The best and the deadliest. So thanks all for hanging out. Hopefully nobody has been blown away in this wind, but you're about to get blown away by this presentation. Am I right? Okay. So obviously, I think, one of the themes of this era of crypto that I think we're seeing right now, I mean, we just are replacing someone from Visa on the stage, right, is the combination of Web2 and Web3. And I think it's very exciting as somebody who felt like I was in a weird fringe industry for a very long time, getting the legitimacy of folks like this, actually taking our industry serious is very, very, very awesome. I guess also one of the things that we kind of wrongly believed is that we're different in every way. Crypto is just a unique snowflake across every dimension. And I feel like I was thinking about security that way many years ago too. And so I'm curious to hear from you lovely folks, is Web3 security different? Is it the case that we're fundamentally doing new things here? Or is it actually just a myth? Is security just making secure software and that is the same no matter what software you're writing? You guys have thoughts on a compare and contrast?
Yeah, and I'll go first. So I do think that there are some healthy differences between Web2 and Web3 security. For one obvious thing is that you have a definable, provable notion of security in Web2 in a lot of ways. And then when it comes to smart contract security, for instance, there is no provable notion of security. So that to me is currently, right, the hope is that we get there. So that to me is like one distinct difference that we have to work with right now. And beyond that, I do think that there are some... Why did it...
They'll bring a new one, don't worry.
Here. Good.
Hello? Yeah? Yeah. Great. Cool. It doesn't like me. Yeah, and then on top of that, I do think there are some really interesting differences with the types of things that you'll see, like composability and atomicity are pretty distinct, I think, problems of Web3 that, or not, I shouldn't say problems, but interesting challenges to work with, right? That can be both a tool and something that can be difficult to navigate as well. So I do think that there are some differences.
Yeah, I'll add, I think there are some differences fundamentally on the smart contract side of the house. I think when you consider the entire picture of, hey, we are providing infrastructure to financial institutions. They have been working for decades, securing their systems, custody, money movement, all of these. As we provide these types of services to financial institutions, to fintechs, they have very, very high expectations. And I think the smart contracts becomes one important facet, but not the entire story. And I think as we've all, I think, discovered in the last couple of years, it becomes incredibly important to secure every aspect of the journey of a transaction or the journey of a stablecoin. From the person on the website types in the code, hey, that has to be a secure page, that has to be absolutely bulletproof, all the way to the transaction happens on chain. Every step of the way, you need to have bulletproof security. And when a fintech comes to us, like a JPMorgan or Revolut or Robinhood comes to Alchemy, they expect that level of competence. They expect us to be as good at Web3 security as Web2 security, what they're used to, what they've seen for the past decades. They essentially expect the level of security that they enjoy when they use AWS, like when they enjoy cloud providers. And I think in the last couple of years, we've really had to internalize this idea that the bar is now AWS. Like for anything that Alchemy does, we need to aspire at AWS level of reliability, scaling, consistency, and security.
And I guess like my question there is like, does that always apply? Guillaume, I know one thing you were doing before being in Alchemy was working on Web3 in Stripe. And I'm curious if like, was that just a matter of taking the Stripe security model and running a blockchain node inside of it? Or is it like, these are fundamentally different APIs and like we need to apply the same concepts to a new thing? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the principles behind the security are the same. Like the way you think about them. Like you have threats, you have people trying to do bad things from the outside, maybe even from the inside the company. All of these are threats that you need to model, and they apply slightly differently to Web3, but the context is the same. Like the way you go about it, the mindset, the tabletop exercises that you run with the security team are essentially the same exercises. So you can get a lot of inspiration from the Web2 world, bring those hard-earned lessons and apply them to Web3. In the context of Stripe, interestingly, a lot of what we were doing in crypto, so Stripe spends a huge amount of time securing card numbers, securing every aspect of the transaction. A lot of what we were doing in crypto, because Stripe at that time didn't really have a depth of expertise, we were using vendors, we were using Zero Hash, we were using Alchemy, we were using Paxos, we were using many, many vendors that had built the Web3 expertise, all the while Stripe was ramping up on the context of Web3.
Mm. So you're saying, regardless of what weird computation, like regardless of whether or not you think Web3 is the hottest new thing that fundamentally changes the paradigm of computation and flips on its head, security is still about like, there's a bunch of threats, there's a bunch of actors that might try to do something bad, and your goal is to prevent
essentially
the badness.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes sense.
And the vectors are slightly different, but the mindset and the way you proactively anticipate and the way you red team things and you try to break them, you do pen tests, like all of these
it's still being paranoid.
Are basically the same things. Yes.
Yeah, you just got to be paranoid.
Exactly. You just have to be you just have to be anxious, incredibly anxious at all times.
Incredibly anxious at all times. That's my MO, my good sir. And Opal, I'm curious to hear from you, like, you know, presumably Coinbase had an existing Web2 security process, and now you're kind of joining the force in a way that is about the Web3 security. Do you find that that resonates as well, where like a lot of the Web2 security models transfer over and it's just a matter of like, we're writing this about a smart contract instead of some matching engine or something, or is there nuance there for Coinbase?
I think there's definitely nuance. I think a lot does translate. So for instance, Web2 and Web3, like no matter which one it is, we want to engage security early and often. That doesn't change. And I do agree. I see a lot of inspiration, for instance, in like for the types of attacks you might see in Web3 from Web2 attacks, right? But there is a little bit of nuance in what our involvement looks like from the Web3 side. For instance, the whole early and often thing, it's actually imperative, right, that we have reviewed everything before it goes to production, because as soon as it's on chain, it is vulnerable, right? So that's a pretty healthy difference there, that you need to have really done a majority of that security work ahead of time. And then beyond that, I think that.
So you're saying basically immutability is the blessing and the curse in some sense.
Absolutely.
It's like, okay, we obviously can apply the same principles of we need to be paranoid and we need to be paranoid early, but there's a too late moment that is like even stricter in the world of Web3 in some sense.
I think
basically.
so. Yeah.
Well, I think it's undeniable that regardless of whether the same principles apply, we do have like different customer bases in the room now, and people like, you know, the institutions coming on chain now are like, have entire teams dedicated to auditing the vendors of infrastructure that they're working with. And I'm wondering if you guys are like seeing that play out. Like I would kind of assume that like the Alchemy story of like what is SOC 2 compliance? And like, do you need that now? Did you need it before? Do you have it now? What are the transformations that you're seeing as like these big names come on chain and start to take things serious?
I think the big difference is before, call it 3 years ago, SOC 2 was a good idea. It's a good set of practices. Like yes, you probably want code reviews on your code. Yes, you probably want some form of auditability when people change feature flags. There's a lot of SOC 2. I guess from a Web3 standpoint, these seem like scary or like kind of arcane or maybe antiquated standard, but actually they are full of good ideas. So SOC 2 3 years ago might have been just a good idea. Today it's required. Like when you work with JPMorgan, you don't work with JPMorgan unless you are SOC 2. Same for Robinhood, same for any of the big names we've been working with. So it becomes a requirement. And SOC 2, you realize at that point, becomes the beginning of the journey. There is many, many other standards that are much higher grades, like ISO, DORA. And so SOC 2 ends up being the easy one. And then bit by bit, you get all the standards you need for different parts of the world. To cover not just security and security practices, but also user privacy and all the requirements around money movement and such. So I would say it's probably a good thing. It feels like it's part of the industry graduating into, okay, now we are serious. Like we're moving serious amounts of money around. We are serving hundreds of millions of people, hopefully billions of people soon. And we're graduating to the point where these things matter. And you can't afford mistakes, whether on smart contract or on any other aspects of security. And so I think these standards feel like they're actually helping at this point.
I was just gonna add to that to say that like as far as like when Web2 companies come to us and like want to engage in the Web3 space, right now I think from our side we're finding that there's not a lot of companies coming to us with requirements, so to speak, as to like what they're looking for in terms of like security and meeting certain standards, but instead they're more asking questions about what is even feasible at this point. And a lot of these questions are more based around, they're application-based rather than sort of chain-based. And with those questions, we are able to like take what everybody's sort of like looking for, all these Web2 companies are looking for, and from the Coinbase side, we are basically like extrapolating and going towards like what can we make the standards for Web3 look like, and so like part of our work that we do is kind of forward thinking in that way, where we are working with organizations like Blockchain Security Standards Council and other Web3 companies and Web2 companies like MasterCard to come up with what these Web3 standards that are very like SOC 2-like should look like in Web3. Yeah.
So I'm hearing basically like, yeah, SOC 2 is good. There's actually much harder ones to pass. They all have the right direction, the right shape. You need code review, you need user privacy. And then in some cases, people aren't sure what they need, or they aren't sure how to translate that, and there's like a more collaborative effort to try to do the product development of, I mean, is there a SOC 3? Can we just say Web3 SOC 2 is SOC 3? I feel like that's...
There might be at some point.
Big opportunity, huh?
Big opportunity. I'm gonna buy SOC3.eth tonight, yeah. Okay, a couple of minutes left. I wanted to ask a couple of targeted questions to each of you. Opal, one thing that is awesome is that Coinbase is just generally coming on chain with like over 100 million users, and I think one of the things that Coinbase has done a really good job of is like trying to make as seamless as possible or as invisible as possible the bridge between the on-chain world and the off-chain world or the on-chain adjacent world. I don't know, just kind of an open-ended question, like what are the kind of infrastructural choices that you've seen Coinbase making that has like helped you guys succeed there?
Yeah, I think from our standpoint, one of the biggest things that we've done to make like just blockchain seem more invisible to users in general is account abstraction in the past few years. That we've focused on things like deploying like EAP 7702 type products, as well as ERC 4337 enablement through our Magic Spend Paymaster. Like these are both things that what they're able to do is take a user's account and allow users to have more complex flows of transactions from their account, right? And they are enabled to do this through signatures. And the reason that that makes things more invisible for them on their part is that we're able then to produce these complex flows, and they're able to sign off on them, and then they don't see what goes on behind the scenes, but what they need done gets done. And that is a really valuable piece of tooling that has helped us with that. And one example of how it's helped us is in the past year, we've worked with Shopify. We collaborated to bring USDC payments onto Shopify for all merchants if they want. And part of that has been two different components. There's an on-chain component and an off-chain component. On-chain component is to look exactly like the payment system you would traditionally see, like if you're like on a website. And then on the off-chain component, we have base pay in the background that's allowing for just one click for paying, and that's huge. That makes the whole system seem as if you're just buying something from a regular website, but you're actually doing something on chain. So yeah, that's a big contribution.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's awesome. Guillaume, your reputation precedes you. You came from Google before. Actually, we were talking off stage. Guillaume was helping with Google Books back in the day. So we're actually on stage with someone who like created the training set for ChatGPT to even function in the right place. It's pretty epic. I don't know. I'm curious, like, from your perspective, is the Web3 scalability story actually that much different? Like, is it unique? Or do you actually sit in a place at Alchemy where you look at everything and you're like, this is kind of what I was doing at Google. Like, it's maybe there's an ETH in front of the RPC. But we're like, are we doing the same stuff? Are we just deluding ourselves that this is all so much different? You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, it's a good question. A lot of the principles are the same. But I think there is something interesting about blockchain as a primitive because it's decentralized, permissionless. It's fundamentally difficult. It's not like you own the database, you own the code of the database. Like when we operate in that space as infra providers, we worked with 160 different teams with 160 different blockchains. They all have different code base. They all have their own update cycle. So there is a primitive at the base of this that is still very much in research mode, trying to push the boundary that we don't control. To me, that's the main difference. Everything that we build on top of that is very much Google style of engineering, like distributed systems, like bulletproof routing and failover, and like all the mechanisms you can invent for caching and scalability and incident management and like being clever about all of these things. That is Google style engineering. But the fundamental piece underneath is blockchain, and that feels like it's very much the bleeding edge of what we know how to do as an ecosystem. The fact that it's permissionless, the fact that it's not a single open source code base, but it's like hundreds of open source code bases, adds an element of complexity, and it's part of what makes it incredibly interesting. And that's part of the reason why I decided to move towards crypto and blockchain personally. It's like, yeah, distributed system, been there, done that, but blockchain is truly interesting and unique, and the scaling challenges that we see like day to day at Base or Alchemy or like trying to scale the world chain, like all of these are unique challenges that no one has solved before, and to me that's incredibly attractive.
Okay, so I guess to play that back, it's like there are some layers in which it's similar, and there are some layers at which it is different.
Yeah, it's very different to the base.
Yeah, the base layer. The base. There we go. What a better place to stop than there. Guillaume, Opal, thank you guys so much. Thanks all for hanging through. Appreciate it.